Hey everyone, Mr. Voikin here. This is lesson 1.6 and we're going to be looking at percentages. So what is a percentage? Well, it is a number that can be expressed as a ratio out of 100. So a ratio is another word for a fraction. So if you wrote a test and you got 100 out of 100, you have 100%. Now if you wrote the same test and got 56 out of 100, you're going to have 56%. And if there happened to be a bonus question at the end and you ended up with a score of 105 out of 100, you can actually have greater than 100%. You would have 105%. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to be able to convert between percentages, decimals, and fractions. So when we're going from a percent to a decimal, what we're going to do is we're going to divide by 100. And if we're dividing by 100, the decimal place is going to move left 2 positions. Okay, so to go from percentage to decimal, we are going to divide by 100, and that is just taking the decimal and moving it 2 places to the left. So if we were starting with 55, the number 55, the decimal is right here. So we're going to take that and jump it 2 positions right there. So essentially this decimal is going to go boom, boom, and end up right there. So what we end up with is a 0.55. Okay, now we're going to take that same theory and move down to line number 4, row number 4. In this case, we have 225%. Well, again, we're going to divide by 100, which means move the decimal place 2 positions to the left. So if I have 225 as the number, again, where is the decimal place? It's right there. And what are we going to do? 2 positions. So essentially, this decimal right here went 1, 2, and we end up with 2.25. So this will equal, as a decimal, 2.25. And we'll do that one more time. Down on row number 7, we have 0.05. Divide by 100, just move that decimal 2 positions to the left. So if we have 0.05, again, we're going to take this decimal and go 2 times, which is going to move this thing all the way 2 right there. Now we've got that empty little space, so we're going to fill that space up with another 0. So this will equal 0.0005. Okay, I'm just going to resize this. Okay, and notice how we always have to have some digit in front of the decimal. So in the first row, we've got 0 in front of it. In this 4th row, we've got a 2 in front of it, and also in the 7th row, we put a 0 in front of that. Okay, now let's start dealing with decimal going to a percent. Well, when we went from percent to decimal, we divided by 100, so this time we're going to multiply by 100. We're going to do the opposite. And last time, when we're dividing, the decimal place went 2 positions left. So this time, when we're multiplying, it's going to go right 2 positions. Okay, so let's take a look at this number, 0.06. Again, what's going to happen to that decimal? It's going to go 2 times to the right. So this decimal is going boom, boom, ending up right there. So that is going to equal 6%. All right, let's move down to line number 5. We have 3.8, the decimal number 3.8. Again, we're going to take that and we're going to multiply it by 100, which is going to move the decimal 2 positions. So this is going to go, do that again. 1, 2. So our decimal ends up right there, but I've got that empty space before the decimal. And what am I going to do? Just fill that in. So we have 380%. And notice that if there's ever a decimal that it has a non-zero digit in front of that decimal, the percent is going to be greater than 100. Now let's move down to the 8th row right here. And we've got this decimal that just has lots of zeros, so it's 0.00006, but it's going to be the same thing. We're going to take that number, 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros and a 6. We're going to multiply that by 100, which means the decimal is going to go 1, 2 positions right there. And like I said, this decimal is just going to jump right there. And now we have basically, the way it's written right there is 0.006, but we would never write it like this. We just need one number in front. Sorry, I'm going to use red, 0.006%. That is a very, very small number. Now, what about going from a percentage to a fraction? Well, what did I say a percentage was? It is a number, a ratio out of 100. So this is just 55 out of 100. And now all you need to do is we just need to simplify that down to lowest terms. So I can see that these numbers end in 5 and 0, so they're both divisible by 5. 55 divided by 5 is 11, and 100 divided by 5 is 20, and that would be our final answer. The fraction of 11 over 20 is in simplest form. Okay, let's take a look at the next one, which is 6% on line number 2. So 6% again would be 6 out of 100. Both those numbers end as an even number, so we know 2 can divide in there. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 100 divided by 2 is 50. So 6% is equivalent to 3 out of 50. All right, and let's move to our 225%. So like I said, we can actually have a larger number, an improper fraction, as we see it here. And we've got a 5 and a 0, so both of those can end with, be divided by 5, and 225 divided by 5 is 45, and 100 divided by 5 is 20, and you can see that we can do that one more time. So 45 divided by 5 is 9, and 20 divided by 5 is 4. Now, this is an improper fraction in simplest form, but if we were asked to put that into a mixed number, we would divide, see how many times 4 can divide into 9, and that's 2 times. Our denominator is still going to be 4. 4 times 2 is 8, and the 9 minus 8 is 1. So the mixed number that represents 225% is 2 1/4. Okay, the next one is also a percentage greater than 100. We have 380%, so that would be 380 over 100. I can see that 38, they both end in 0, so I would divide them both by 10. I have 38 over 10. They both end with an even number, so now I have 19 over 5 when I divide both of those by 2. So again, we have an improper fraction, and to put it to a mixed number, I can see that 5 can divide into 19, 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15, and 19 minus the 15 is 4, and our denominator needs to stay the same at 5. Okay, so let's take a look down here at 0.05. So this one's a little bit different, and it's still going to be 0.05 over 100, but it looks weird as a fraction with the numerator having a decimal. But again, what I need to do is I need to move that decimal 2 spaces to the right. So if I move that 2 spaces to the right, I need to move this 2 spaces to the right. So what we actually end up with there is going to be 5 over, and this is going to be 100, and those 2 spaces here are filled with zeros. Okay, now I can see they end in a 5 and a 0, so I can divide 5 by 5, I get 1, and I can divide 10,000 by 5, and I get 2,000. So 0.05% as a fraction is going to be 1 over 2,000. So that one's definitely a little bit trickier than the other two that we did above. Okay, so let's take a look at the following one, and we have 0.006%. Now, instead of working with that percentage, I'm going to work with the decimal one. And we can see that there is the tenths column, the hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, and 100,000ths. Okay, so that as a fraction would end up being 6 over 100,000. And again, I can see that we have even numbers in both cases. So I know I can divide by 2. And 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. And 100 divided by 2 is going to be 50,000. Now the last thing we need to do is convert a fraction into a percent. And it's sort of the easiest if you take fraction to decimal and then decimal to percent. Now what we do is we divide the denominator into the numerator. So we're just going to divide 2 by 5. So in this case, I'm going to take the number 2 and I'm going to divide it by 5. Now don't forget there's a decimal at the end of that 2, and we always want to sort of bring that up, so the decimal is going to be right there. Okay, now can 5 divide into 2? The answer is no, so we're going to have a 0 right there. Now, I'm going to add a 0 after the decimal, and remember I can add as many as I want. It doesn't change the value in that case. But I'm asking myself now, does 5 divide into 20? The answer is yes, it divides in there 4 times. And 4 times 5 is 20, and we have no remainder at that point, so it's done. So the percentage that we have is 0.4. And now to change that into a percentage, now that we have the decimal number 0.4, again, what are we going to do? We're going to multiply by 100, which means move the decimal 2 places to the right. So if I have 0.04, if I have 0.4, we're going to move that 1, 2 to the right, and we're going to fill in that space with a 0. So our answer is going to be 40%. Okay, now we'll move down to the line that has 5 and 7 over 10. Okay, well, we're just going to take that 5, and that's a whole number, so it's going to be like 5 point something. Okay, now we're just going to take a look at that fraction, which is 7 over 10. Okay, well, you should know at this point that 7 over 10 is equal to 5.7. So this is just going to be 5.7. Okay, now we're going to take that decimal that we have, 5.7, and we're going to change that to a percent, again, by moving the decimal place 2 times to the right, which is like multiplying by 100. So in this case, we're going to end up with 570%. And the last one, we've got 5 over 1,000. So again, if we look at this, to put this as a decimal, we can just go 0 point. Well, we're talking about the thousandths. Okay, now that is going to be tenths, 100ths, and 1,000ths. So this would be 0, 0, and the 5 1,000ths. Okay, so now we have 0.005, and we want to change that from that decimal to a percent multiplied by 100, which means move the decimal 2 places to the right. So when I have 0.005, again, I'm going to take that decimal 2 decimal places to the right, and that is going to equal 0.5%. Okay, so I know there's a lot to go over there, but this is very important, and you're going to need to understand how to do this to move forward in other units. Okay, so you just need to practice and practice some more. Well, what I want to do right now is move into some word problems. Okay, now students quite often have problems with word problems in the sense that they, can't figure out what information to take out of all these words and what calculations to perform. So the best thing to do is have yourself a highlighter or something and read through it sentence by sentence and try to analyze and figure out what is important. Okay, so it says you are part of a team that is making cakes for a fundraiser. Okay, so none of that is really that important other than, something is happening. What is important is that they need 240 cakes. Okay, and you are going to make 15% of those cakes. And what we need to know is, well, what do they want us to calculate? Well, how many cakes will you make? Now, on a question like this, you can just rewrite this. I am going to make 15% of the 240 cakes. So I'm going to make 15% of the 240 cakes. Now, 15%, anytime a number is in the percentage form, it's not a number we can use in our calculations. We need to first take this number and change it into a decimal. So how do we convert a percent to a decimal? We're going to take the number and we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the left. So this is going to be 0.15. Now the word of the, right here, of means we're going to multiply. So 0.15 times 240. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to take that number, 240, and multiply that by 0.15. Okay, well, 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 4 is 20. Carry the 2. 5 times 2 is 10. Plus the 2 is 12. Now we've got the 1, which is in the tenths column. So I'm going to put a 0 first. Then I'm going to multiply 1 times 0, which is 0. 1 times 4, which is 4. And 1 times 2, which is 2. Okay, now that I'm done, I'm going to do this addition. And then I need to look at how many decimal places are there in our numbers that we're multiplying together. Well, I had 1, 2. So in my answer, I need to have 1, 2. So that means the decimal is going right here, and the answer is you will make 36 cakes. Okay, so here is another word problem, and this is a very standard problem. On your last math test, the test was out of 35. So when it's out of 35, that is going to be a test that is out of 35. Okay? Now, this is another way of saying sort of out of right there. Okay? So now what does the rest say? You got 28 questions correct. So you got 28 correct questions. So that means that is going to be a score of 28 out of 35. And what is the word problem asking us to do? It's saying, what is your percentage grade? So what percent? So we want to take this and we want to convert that into a percent. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, remember that earlier in the lesson, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to change that into a fraction. And then once we have it into a fraction, we will change that into a percent. Okay, so how do I take 28 out of 35 and represent that as a fraction? Well, I'm going to divide 35 into 28. And don't forget, there's a decimal right here, and we just want to bring that decimal up. That's the first thing you should do when we're dividing numbers. Okay, and remember that I can add some zeros behind the decimal. It doesn't change anything. So, does 35 divide into 2? The answer is no. Does it divide into 28? The answer is no. So at this point, I'd put 1 0 in front of there. And now I'm dealing with the number 280. Can 35 divide into 280? And the answer is yes. So if I just sort of estimate, it's going to be somewhere around 7, 8, or 9. So let's grab the middle number right there, and we'll look at 35 times 8. And that's going to be 8 times 5 is 40. Carry the 4. 8 times 3 is 24. Plus 4 is 28. So it works out perfectly there. So 35 times 8 is going to be 280. And basically this is going to be an 8 up there. So now I've got this decimal of 0.8. And how do I take a decimal number into a percentage? I'm going to multiply that by 100. So I'm going to multiply that by 100, which essentially moves that decimal place 2 spots. And that is going to be 80%. So the answer to this is the grade on the math test is 80%. Congratulations. Okay, the last word problem of this lesson. Steve buys a jacket for 800 MYP. So that's the original price, 800 MYP. And the salesperson tells him the jacket is 25% off. So that means he's going to pay 25% less than the original price of 800 MYP. So what the question is asking is, what is 25% of 800? And again, don't forget that of is times 800 is the original price, 25%. We need to change that to a decimal. So we're going to divide by 100, which means the decimal place is going to move 2 places to the left, and we end up with 0.25. We just need to do that math. So 800 times 0.25. I'm going to get 0, 0. 5 times 8 is 40. When I move to the 2, I have to put a 0 first and then start doing 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, and 2 times 8 is 16. We're going to add all of that together. 0, 0, 0, 0, carry the 1 and 2. How many decimal places do I have? I've got 2 decimal places, so I need to have 2 decimal places here. So the decimal is going to go right, zoom right in, right there. So the answer is 200. So how much money will Steve save? Steve will save 200 MYP. Okay, so second part of this question says, well, what is the actual sale price of the jacket? Well, if he's going to save 200 and the original price was 800 MYP, that's a very easy calculation. We're just going to take the original price of 800 MYP. We're going to subtract the amount that he will save the 25% off, which is 200 MYP, and we're going to end up with 600 MYP. So the answer here is the sale price of the jacket is 600 MYPs. Okay, that's it for this lesson, and we'll see you in class.